I think I have a talk that's a little bit not medical, but sort of medical, that I was going to give about how we're using technology in our department. But we sort of ran out of time. I know I had to jump last week, and I'm sure there were usually questions that I didn't get to answer. And if there are any, I thought maybe we'd do a Q&A to start. And if we run out of questions or it just gets boring, I'll just give you a talk. But we can look at the chat. I think that the point of last week was to just do your thing, and the grand scheme of things is just basically to keep your eyes on your larger goals and not worry what other people are doing. And if you do the best you can, that's all you can do. What other people do doesn't really matter. And the whole concept of comparison being the thief of joy, which I think is something I think about every day, as I said. So if there are any specific questions about how I ended up going into this business, or the usual softball question, that's fine. Or if you have other specific things that you thought about last week that you didn't get to answer, I'm happy to address that. If not, I can go right into a talk.
BRAINterns, the chat and the Q&A are open for questions. So if you have questions for Dr. Langer, start putting those in there.
Your certificate can be used for college. We've gotten a lot of questions about Mariami. We often will get admissions committees reaching out, both from college and medical schools now, asking about the course, if it's real. And we of course send a letter back that this is how many hours it is. So, but the certificate matters only in that if they check, we can put whatever you want in your CV. Obviously, you have to be on a Scout's honor with that for the rest of your life. So if you participate in something, you should say what their interpretation is their problem, not yours. So do your thing. You were here and you enjoyed it. You put it on your CV, and it's a nice thing to add. It also, I think, more importantly, will give you maybe something to talk about during interviews and things like that. Something you heard or thought about or considered. It could be a talking point for you for a while. But what I would do is, if you have something you're interested in, make sure you read up about it and are a subject matter expert, or at least can speak to more than, I just participated in this. Well, what did you do? Well, we listened to lectures. What did they talk about? Well, one guy talked about Stoic philosophy. What about Stoic philosophy? I don't really remember. You want to make sure if you're going to talk about an experience, it shouldn't just be to impress somebody. It should be because you really believe in it, and have really thought it through, and that you're prepared to talk about it. And that really goes for any interview for the rest of your life. What we see people all the time. We interview neurosurgery residents. It's very clear who's telling you what they want you to hear, rather than someone who's really motivated or has ideas or things like that. And it's okay to say I don't know, or I'm not sure, but to sort of just throw out something, I did this, and being proud of yourself doesn't accomplish as much as if you say I was really interested in something and continue to talk about it, even to the point of maybe you read it up some more, did some more work on it to improve your overall IQ. So I think that's an important thing to do as far as anything you participate in when you put it on your CV. Tips that you give to those who have problems with comparison. There are no tips, just stop. I think it's human nature to compare yourself. From probably the time you're a little kid, you're comparing yourself probably to your brothers and sisters, to your classmates, and then what somebody gets, you're jealous of, and somebody gets a better present than you or a nicer lollipop, and it goes from there. And I think this is something that's inherent in the way we grew up as kids, the way we're incentivized to get good grades. We're more as worried about what our friends are getting as what we're getting. Our SAT scores, what did you get? And when you hear somebody got a higher score than you feel like crap. And why did that person get it? Where people get into school, it goes on and on. It's a never-ending vicious cycle. And the only way to overcome it is just to stop and to recognize that you're doing that. Recognize I do the same thing still. Someone will do something and I immediately feel, like I did something. And then I just remind myself not to do that. It's just, you have to sort of arrest the thought process. And I do it every day, because it's just not, it's not normal to be able to do that on your own spontaneously. It's a lot easier for me now because I've been doing it for, a few years, but I'm 61, I should have done this, when I was 11. And I try to teach my kids that, although I think it does require you going through the experience of growing up and feeling the negativity that comes along with comparison to understand the value of not comparing. If you didn't feel the negativity, you may not understand the value of not comparing. And I think part of it is that comparison sometimes gives you some anxiety, which isn't always a bad thing. And maybe that's what makes you work harder when you're younger. You know, you need that comparison to make you do that extra studying because you really push yourself. And it goes without saying, whether you're in a healthcare career, it's hard work. And so you have to overcome some of those the laziness that's built into us and find ways to push ourselves. If looking at other people makes you push yourself, that may be valuable for that reason, but it has a downside, because ultimately, no matter how hard you work, that's the best you can do. If you need external motivation, looking at what other people are doing, that's the problem. You have to, you know, wean yourself off of that and do it because that's why it's so important to do what you love to do. It really motivates you, it interests you. It's not to make your parents happy or to prove that you're cool or help tell everybody you're this or that because you feel you want to get feedback from other people looking at you. It's sort of the same process. You don't worry what people think of you. You know, you got to go do your thing. And you need to break some of those perceptions, and it's an adult process. It's not, I think it's very hard when you're younger. I'm not sure if I could have done it, you know, in my, you know, teens and 20s, but when you understand these concepts, you can start, because you'll feel things in your life where you're doing that, where you're sliding back and, oh yeah, that's what this Dr. Langer was talking about. I'm feeling that right now. And then you start working, ratcheting it back a little bit. And it really helps. I think it's a source of much of our anxiety and our pain, our sleep problems, ill health. And when, we all go through bad stuff, it's inevitable. And to have these sort of ways of behavioral modification that you can do on your own, it helps you get through some of the rougher times for sure. So, did you ever have to deal with low self-esteem regarding your job? Like, did you ever ask yourself, what if I'm not made for this? Admittedly, I'm pretty self-confident, and I don't think it's ego. Like I used to have more of an ego about stuff, like wanting to prove that I was the best. Not really do that anymore. But I don't have a self-esteem problem, but that may be because I've developed it over. I think when I was younger, it was important to me that I did something important, put it that way, or that I was saving lives or doing hard things, because I felt like was kind of my nature to do things like that. And whether that was because I was trying to impress myself and give myself self-confidence, or impress somebody else, is probably a combination of two, because I think I probably was a little insecure. But the truth is, once I started doing things and looking at myself, not looking at other people, but looking at myself and trying hard things and working through the struggles and failing, and realizing that everybody fails, and that taking some risk, doing some things that other people thought was crazy that worked, doing things that other people thought was crazy and failed, and recognizing it was I'm the same person. I started to recognize that I really was confident that no matter what I did, I'd be okay, because one of the best things is when you fail, you realize you learn something from that. It's not all negative. And it starts to build over time. You don't have as much insecurity about, what a bad outcome might mean to your life, or if you aren't perfect, or if you don't totally get to where you want to go. And I think if you asked me today, that I'd be sitting here, talking to BRAINterns at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Friday in July, in Lenox Hill Hospital, when I was first starting my residency, I tell you, that's crazy. I mean, what the hell is that? Because you never know where you're going. And admittedly, because some of the training I had and the people that I got exposed to, like I told you last week, this invisible force stuff, you sort of almost like Forrest Gump. Sometimes you sort of follow a stream, and the stream turns, and you go a different direction. The wind blows, the leaf falls off and goes to a different stream. I think it's one of the things I'm not very good at, that I wasn't good at, is making decisions with a longer term play in mind. That's a failure of mine. I was more dependent on other people. Hey, you want to do this with me? And I would do it. Or was not as thoughtful about the results of some of my early decisions, whether it was leaving UPenn or the type of hospital I was going to after the training I had. But the truth is even though that might be seen as a failure, because I left kind of classic academic medicine, I learned a lot about myself and became a different person, and overcame obstacles. And I feel like I can, it opened my mind to some of these other concepts that I'm talking about. A lot of times, if you're just doing the same things over and over again, that everyone seems like the right thing, going to the right name of school and going to getting the right job and, doing the right thing, what everybody else thinks is the right thing, aren't even aware of how these things play on your mind. We pay too much attention to like top 10 rankings and this place is better than that place, and using these is to help us make decisions. It absolutely makes no difference. And you may feel better about yourself because what it says on your CV or what it says on your business card, but that's absolutely irrelevant to joy. It may make you feel good once in a while when you're at some dinner party and say, "Oh, I went here," and "Oh, that's amazing," and then you feel good for like 10 seconds, and then you move on, and then you have to go live in your life and all the jerks that you're surrounded by who are a bunch of pricks because they're built a certain way. And so you have to recognize that once you start to feel this complexity, you can make better decisions and live with the decisions you make and just make the most of your situation. And that's where the comparison thing comes in. I mean, as an example, Lenox Hill Hospital is in the middle of Manhattan. We have these major university health systems around us. We're constantly fighting for attention. Patients choose to go to other hospitals because their name, we feel like we're the best in the world. We know we are. And yet people don't come to us because it's not this university hospital or that. And when I was younger, I used to get really upset. Like, oh my God. And now it's just like almost like I just roll my eyes, say, whatever, it's their loss. And you build your own confidence that way. So your self-esteem a lot of times comes in because you're just comparing yourself to other people, or you're worried about what other people are thinking of you. And so the minute you stop doing that, you just particularly don't compare yourself to others. Whether you worry about what other people think of you, that's a different, modification. I would argue you shouldn't do that either. But there's definitely an element of wanting to be a good person and wanting to live a good life and having, people like you and having an impact. Some people don't care about whether you like me or not. I do care. Like, it matters to me that I'm thought of as a good person. I realize that not everybody's going to think that. People who don't know me or see me do something in the public or see a TikTok and think, what a jerk for doing that stupid dance with John or whatever. I have no control over that. I don't know them. I don't care. But on the other hand, the people in my office practice, my partners, my residents, it matters to me. And so if I feel negativity, I just address it. It's not a self-esteem issue. I say, hey, is everything okay? And we have a discussion. It's important to be transparent. So I think that's kind of the way you overcome this. I think what's a bigger problem is sort of imposter syndrome. And that just comes with the territory. As you move up the food chain, all of a sudden you get an MD after your name, you wear a white coat, you have a stethoscope and a reflex hammer. People think you know what you're talking about and you don't. And you have to recognize this is part of learning. You're not going to know everything. So I really never had that problem. I was like, look, I'm just a medical student, or I'm just a first-year intern, or I'm a resident. And you just have to just accept this as part of growing up and learning to go from being a lay person to a neurosurgeon. It takes a lot of work. It just doesn't happen because you put a white coat on. But by the same token, it's incremental. And there's going to be days that you don't know things. And as long as you're honest with yourself and honest with the people you're talking about, there's no imposter syndrome because you're just revealing yourself. Like, I don't know the answer to this. Just because I have an MD doesn't mean I know everything. And if people, think less of you for that, that's their problem. It's not your problem. But you have to work as hard as you can. And when you don't know the answer to a question, then you have to try to keep making yourself better. I don't accept. I usually always try. I'm a fixer. Like, even this whole AI thing, I'm trying to fix problems. If I see something that bothers me, I try to fix it. It's not always good because a lot of times legacy and the way everybody else is doing things works for them. Just because it doesn't work for you, then I try to fix it, and then people get pissed off at you because what are you trying to fix this for? And then you come up against obstacles, and that's kind of what the trouble with innovation is. When you're somebody who's always questioning kind of the normal, there are a lot of people who rely on the normal, and you have to know what kind of personality you are. And I find it to be very frustrating to be me sometimes. It's really a problem, but I'm not going to change. So that's the self-esteem question. During residency, our neurosurgeons taught a series of steps on how to remove a tumor, for example. I mean, basically everything we learn is incremental. I mean, from medical students on, you're taught how to put an IV in, or how to check blood pressure, or how to, do a rectal exam. And then The next thing might be a lumbar puncture or a central line, like a large IV under the subclavian. And you just gradually increase it's incremental. Every day you learn something else, or there's a procedure that you try and you fail, and then the next time you come back and you learn from that. And it's a slow, gradual increase, because as the complexity goes up, often the risk goes up. And so early on, if you miss a lumbar puncture or you don't get an IV, there's not a huge downside to that. You're not going to hurt somebody necessarily. But then when you start getting into surgery, you can imagine that there are little steps, and there's some no-fall zones. A no-fall zone in skiing is if you fall, you die. Well, there are no-fall zones in surgery, where if you screw this up, a patient can be hurt or die. And so those are these transitions. I mean, have you ever seen the movie with Alex Honnold about him climbing? Free Solo is the name of the movie. And he talks about these moves he had to learn how to make that were if he missed the move, he would die because he had no ropes. And there are some things not quite like that in surgery, because remember, you don't die if you screw up, the patient does. And so there's a big difference in the risk we take as surgeons than when you're free climbing. I think if I was operating and I was going to kill myself by mistake, it's a completely different emotion. But each of these incremental things, you learn from them. And then next time when you come back, you gain more confidence and you gain more skill, you're more relaxed. And each of your surgical skills build on top of that. And that's why the residency is 7 years long. And I think I probably learned more about myself the first year out of residency when I was a fellow than even the 7 years because as your confidence goes up, your skills get better, and then your learning accelerates because you start to be able to do things more spontaneously because you understand the tools, you understand how the drills work, you understand where to put your non-dominant hand. Very often we see people operating with one hand to start, like our dominant hand, and the left hand is sort of sitting there doing nothing if you're right-handed. And then gradually you realize that your left hand, your non-dominant hand, is even more important because it gives you space and it creates room. Because the more room you create, it's more safe. Because if your structures are close to each other, you want to develop air essentially around structures. I always tell the residents, find air. Air is safe to operate in. And your left hand, if you're right-handed, creates space and moves tissue away. It'll give your right hand the freedom to work. And so learning how to use your left hand or your non-dominant hand is part of the training, which doesn't come easily. It comes later on. So, those are the things that really happen, whether you're a neurosurgeon, general surgeon, OBGYN. I think that all those features are the way you learn. And I think even in medicine, or same thing. You read and you see a problem, you connect dots, and then you're more able to connect those dots next time. I think that's the challenge of AI. In the future is that, a lot of the thinking part of healthcare, the connecting, different data points and coming up with an outcome are going to be solved by AI. So, the physicians of the future are going to use AI as a tool and are going to basically get an output that they're going to read and then decide, is that going to be, what I'm going to do? Is that appropriate? So number one, it's going to make you a lot more efficient. Number two, it's going to take away some of the, kind of thinking of healthcare, and we're going to need less physicians because we'll be more efficient. So I'm pretty sure if I was in medical school now that I'd want to be a proceduralist, that I want to be doing something with my hands, even if it's not necessarily, open surgery, dermatology, ophthalmology, because you don't do something with your hands that, results in a change of a person's outcome. I think just thinking and just connecting data are going to be not as important as it used to be. And we already see that now. You can't get paid for half of that stuff anyway. I mean, the amount of money that you make thinking pales in comparison to if you do a procedure. Not should all be about money, but you have to make a living. And if you have to work all day, every day on talking to patients and making decisions, and you can't afford your office practice or you can't afford to live, that's a problem. And what's going to ultimately happen, I think, is that nurse practitioners and PAs who don't have the overhead, haven't spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, will be given an opportunity to do a lot more because the AI will bring the the kind of educational necessity down to a different level. It's going to be a lot cheaper to solve a majority of medical problems. A kid comes in with a fever and a white count, and you put their labs in, and it says, well, it could be strep throat. Recommend a strep test, and the nurse gives you a strep test. Never even see a doctor. So these are the types of things that are going to happen, and whether you're going to go into healthcare otherwise, keep this in mind. The AI is a fantastic. It's a revolution, but it's happening right now, and it's in its infancy. And so when you're thinking about what kind of career you're going to have, you've got to consider these things, because in 10 years the world's going to be totally different. And if you just do what everybody else is doing now and follow the leader and look at somebody else doing, I'm going to be just like that person, but don't consider how this world may change. You could be, have real stress 10 years from now. So this is a massive change, a huge inflection point. And while that's an opportunity for you, it's also stressful, because, oh my God, how am I going to adjust? The only way to adjust is to learn the most you can about it, read what you can, incorporate it into your life, and then use that as you choose a career. And I think that's the key to being successful in any field you do. And as far as books for intersection of neuroscience, philosophy, and ethics, I mean, I can't say I know a particular one. There's one book, let me look it up. There's a book by the name of Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist that is maybe something you're talking about. Master and His Emissary. I think that my feeling about reading is I've just enjoyed philosophy books, not just pure philosophy, but just people who are thinking a little bit differently about the world. And it's hard to do that when you're in training or a young neurosurgeon, because you're still learning, you don't have that much time. But now that I'm sort of on the other side of, the midlife thing, I'm in the third trimester of my career, I'm kind of more philosophical about looking back and understanding why I did what I did. And so, I do think that there are tons of books out there. And I like the Stoic stuff, obviously. And there's another Vietnamese Buddhist, Thich Nhat Hanh, who's also it's more like sayings and proverbs and very kind of Buddhist philosophy that I find to be really valuable. And there are things like a book called Dying Every Day by James Romm. Obviously Meditations, which I've talked about last week. And another great book, which I found, was a book called The End of Suffering. I think I may have mentioned it, The Buddha in the Real World by Pankaj Mishra, was just a phenomenal book. So those are just a few off the top of my head. Would ever want to publish a book? I actually thought about it. I actually wrote about 70,000 words last year and had a book agent and an editor, and one editor said she would help me, and then she decided that she couldn't, and then I gave it to another editor, and she said she was going to do it, and then she decided not to do it. I think part of it is there's a financial issue of who I was appealing to, because it was kind of a book about Stoic philosophy and neurosurgery, and how many people are out there reading about Stoic philosophy and neurosurgery, because what's the market size for that? But what I realized is I got out of it what I put in. I'd already, by writing, by putting my mind and pen to paper, I already had accomplished what I really wanted out of the book. Am I going to be a millionaire from writing a book? No. So publishing it became less important. I kind of lost momentum. I may go back to it. I've thought I got away from it for about a year, and I may go back to it and bring some more of these concepts in that we've been talking about. I think it may appeal to a broader audience. And so my intent is probably to go back and do it. And I hope to be able to do that. I think it'd be cool. Is it a positive evolution of AI, or is it negative that less thinking will be needed and less physicians? Will it make us more efficient? Is it not better to have physicians thinking on their feet? I think that, yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's sort of nice to think so. Remember not too long ago, we didn't have MRIs, we didn't have CAT scans. And so we were using the best physicians, we using incredible clinicians. They were do really unique exams and pick up little things and findings that would, the abdominal exam, for example, like you used to have this, learn the how to examine an acute abdomen. There's a whole book on this. We don't have to do it anymore. Just get a CAT scan. Or the brain before MRI, we had all these neurological findings and no one, had to figure it out. Well, now the minute somebody has a hangnail, they get an MRI and we can figure out things way before they even have symptoms. So in the end, yes, it's a nice thing, but it's kind of that old Indiana Jones. I mentioned this last week, the guy who, the samurai guy in Indiana Jones takes out his gun and just shoots him. You can't fight technology. Technology always wins. And so, yes, it'd be nice that everybody had these deep skill sets and could really think and hypothesize what the problems are, but that's just not the way the world works anymore. And so, yes, we'll need less physicians. It's going to make us more efficient. And I don't think it's better to have physicians thinking on their feet because humans make mistakes and they don't pick things up as quickly. And computers are not smarter, they're just faster. And they're able to, accumulate information more quickly, and they're not biased and they don't die. One of the reasons why artificial intelligence is different than intelligence is that we know we're going to die, that we have fear. You don't think about that right now, but fear of death and that failure is inherent of human intelligence, whereas computers can't fear failure and they can't fear death. And so there's that I think, as I think through why artificial intelligence will never get to where human intelligence is, I think that's the reason. Computers can't be afraid. They can't be afraid of failure. They're always right, at least in their minds. Well, the most brilliant person, when you absolutely know the right answer. But when you start to get into some of these more complex things, you're making assumptions and you have biases, and that doesn't exist, I don't think, in artificial intelligence. So there always will be a difference. What happens at the end of residency? The resident have to go job hunting, or is there a system in place for matching? What fellowship? The end of residency, people go and get their own jobs. They usually meet a mentor or apply for jobs, go interview, and then more or less basically get a job offer and they take it, just like any other business. The only difference is that within the university system, very often people talk and, your chairman might call somebody up and say, hey, this is a great person. You ought to really look at him. And then they say, we'll take him him or her into our program. And it could be a little bit more kind of chess, like a chess match. Hold on a second. It's Langer. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, you can send him over. I see you. Thank you. I think you have to call the ICU, make sure they have a bed. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Brett. Okay, bye. So, it's just like a job hunt. I mean, if you want to go to a university job, it's sometimes a little more tricky than a private practice. The private practice job is more or less all on your own. You just, they're just groups of doctors that are looking for partners. And so you can find up through a job search or a, website, or a lot of times there are ads or by word of mouth. The university jobs are a little bit more kept under wraps, and the chairs and some of the, the academic leaders know that there's a job somewhere and call somebody, hey, do you know somebody? And then it's a little bit more shuffling like that, but it's not structured like the residency match. It's very unstructured. What's the most important advice you would give to someone entering nurse residency to stand out in the application process? I felt doing MS for some reason. I think, unfortunately, it's become more and more competitive like everything else, and you got to have papers. You have to do well enough on your boards. I don't know if the board scores matter as much because they're pass fail, but it's really research that separates you and your interview. So if no one's going to match in neurosurgery without some reasonable publications and first authored publications in some reasonable journal. The only other thing is if you have some other interest, master's in public health, or, you've done a PhD in something, or you have an MBA, or you've got some other academic interest where you've got a body of work that's reflective of an interest that has value, that can separate you too. But it's everybody's got good scores. Everybody's comes from good medical schools. Everybody's got good, reports and letters and things like that. So the only way to really separate yourself is either have some other body of work that's reflective of, a skill that you have, or publications. And without publications, you can't match, in my opinion. There's just too many people out there that are really good that have publications. So you got to write some papers. That means you need a mentor, somebody to guide you in the right direction, or take a year out. I think taking a year out, as painful as it is, it's the best thing you could do. Take some of the pressure off. Then you're kind of in more of a structured situation. You don't have to worry about it as much. And I think I took a year out during medical school. It was a great time. The trouble is, it could be stressful on your parents, or financial issues could come up. So that's, unique to you, and you have to, that's something of a consideration. Recommend Sam Keene's Tale 2 during, if you are in how to learn from brain. Oh, that's cool. I never heard of that book. How do you see the field evolving in the next decades? What areas? I think this is easy. It's going to be all functional stuff. Basically, minimally invasive little catheters in the brain, or stimulation. That's going to we're learning how the neural networks work, how the brain is organized. It's a computer, and we're going to learn how to program it, how to change it, how to manipulate it in a way that we never did before. The trouble is not really surgery. I think surgery is opening the skull and looking at the brain and moving the blood vessels around and seeing this beautiful structure. And neurosurgery is becoming very, driven towards not opening the head, meaning through little tiny holes, and imaging and navigation and robotics. And to me, that's a bit of a shame, because the reason why I went to neurosurgery was just for the beauty of the neuroanatomy. And now the neuroanatomy is sort of on an MRI. We're not really directly seeing it when we're in functional neurosurgery, but we're going to be treating anxiety and obesity and ADHD and functional disorders. They're going to start to see, obviously Parkinson's disease and things like that have been attacked, but these are the diseases that we're going to treat. And I think that the days of the giant open surgeries are going to get, we're going to see fewer and fewer of those cases. I think spine is still going to be, a big deal, just because of the aging population and the amount of degenerative spinal disease out there. And neurosurgery obviously has a big role in spine surgery, and a lot of that's going to be less invasive and less open too. So, the things that drew me were some of the really beautiful neuroanatomical things, and hemorrhages and strokes and all these, really death-defying things, and putting yourself and trying to save lives. And I think some of that stuff is changing. It's catheter-based. It's not as open. It's not as, we're losing some of these skills of doing open vascular cases. And, if I was going to neurosurgery right now, I would not be doing what I chose to do before. There's not going to be as much of a role for it. And so I would probably go into spine, or pediatric spine, or I just like open surgery. So I would not do functional. I just don't, even though it's amazing stuff. I just don't find it's not difficult enough with your hands. It's very cerebral, and it's very really thoughtful and planning, but I just don't have the attraction of that. I'd rather have somebody else do it. Pre-med, preparing for the future means just working as hard as you can and doing the best you can. It's recognizing that your work matters, and that the outcome does unfortunately matter. You can't take away the fact that your performance is going to be measured, and it's going to be your performance determines you're getting into medical school, and your performance in medical school determines you're getting into residency. It's very simple. There's no shortcut. And so in general, I hate to use the way the harder you work, because that seems like it's an endless thing, but you need to be organized in your approach to your education. And you have to take care of your body, your health, your social life, your philosophy, your spirituality, develop a balance in those things as best you can, as early as you can. Working your ass off just because you're ambitious and not looking at anything else is not a good thing to do, because you give up a piece of yourself, and it's just not worth it. And you want to learn to have that balance early on if you can. there's no such thing in balance personally in my life. I'm the furthest thing from balance, but that's because I love what I do, and my family knows that. And I try the best I can to have all these other things in my life, but balance is in the eyes of the beholder. When things are imbalances, when there's anger, frustration, depression, anxiety, those are the things that make your life unbalanced. I don't have those things really. And so it's not so much that you want to be able to work out every day and go to church. And then I want to be the best father I can be and the best spouse and somehow manage all these things. It's unmanageable. And you do the best you can. And you're a good human being. And that's all you can do. And you do the right thing. And the rest is, you have to just count on your humanity to just get through it. So, when you give the IMGs, it's really tough, guys. I don't really have great advice other than for an international medical graduate to get an American neurosurgical program is purely luck. I mean, you have to be incredibly gifted and have like a ton of publications. And then you have to come to the US probably temporarily and work in like a research job and blow away, your mentor, who then goes to bat for you and calls people up and say, this guy's the most amazing person, or this woman is the best person I've ever seen. That's the way most IMGs get in. It's not impossible, but it's super challenging because there are a lot of Americans that want these spots, and there's an inherent bias to the American applicants, for better or worse. But some of the most accomplished neurosurgeons out there are IMGs. Many of the chairmen are, and it's possible, but you have to come to the US and put the time in while you're here before you get in. How demanding is the workload amid and the schedule for neurosurgeons more demanding after? Residency in my day was more demanding than it is now because everybody goes home post-call. So it was crazy how hard we worked. And then the assumption was when we were going to get out, the residents would work hard for us. Well, guess what? With all this stuff and changing, now the residents don't work quite as hard, and we're working harder as attendings because we're more dialed in on some of the things that the residents used to do. So, I do think the reason why it's harder work as an attending is because your responsibility. You're the one getting the phone call. You're the one who's stressed out about a bad outcome. You're the one who's, doesn't want to hurt people, has to deal with the families, has to deal with the repercussions of morbidity, mortality. Whereas a resident, as hard as the work was, it was never really your responsibility. We felt it, but the pressure on you was less, even though the actual amount of time we worked was probably harder. I mean, nothing. You're on call overnight in the hospital. You're in the hospital 24 hours. It sort of sucks. They're some of the greatest times of your life, honestly, when you're put in harm's way and you're the one taking over, and you have these amazing experiences with death and dying, and the energy and the group of people you're working with. And there's something about being in those environments with young people. It's just incredibly energetic. And you miss that as an attending sometimes. But I think there's, we work hard. I don't work as hard now as I did, 10 years ago, because I don't take call anymore, and I can do things that, with my brain and management, leadership, administration, that isn't, I don't think, as difficult. But I think in some ways you work harder as an attending than you do as a resident. I really believe that. It's just different. What's a non-traditional medical student? I don't even know what that means. It's not traditional. How do I jump by being the chair of nursery, everything else you're responsible for? I have a great team. You can't be afraid to give up control. And I think to be a leader, you have to allow other people lead and give other people a chance to shine and be successful, and not be afraid of other people getting credit for things. And it becomes really easy, because if you're always worried about yourself and you're getting credit for everything, and that you're in charge of everything, and that you have to be involved in every little thing, you're just chronically anxious. And then people around you aren't as successful, and then it makes your job even harder. So the best way is just letting go. But then it requires recruiting good people, having trust in them, making sure that you have their back and they have yours. Trust means, the way you develop trust is you work hard for somebody without expecting anything back. That's how you develop trust in people. And you have to do that constantly. And it's hard, sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. All of a sudden someone will turn on you or, get pissed off at you about something that you had nothing to do with, and you suffer the consequences of that. I think it's really hard sometimes to do that consistently and feel like you're doing the right thing. What's your philosophy, but you have no say and you're kind of stuck? What's your philosophy with unfavorable situations? You have no say and you're kind of, well, it's the whole thing. Like, you can control what you can control. If it's a bad situation and I can't do anything about it, I don't worry about it. What am I supposed to do? I just go on to the next thing, and there will be a next thing. So I think that this goes back to the Stoic stuff. It's like, you can't worry about the future. We live more in our imagination than we do in reality. And you just do the right thing and don't worry about the things you can't control. It's like the weather. Why get upset about the weather? I mean, what the hell? Put on a freaking raincoat. Put on a heavier jacket. It's cold today. So what? It's hot today. Okay. What am I going to do? That's a manifestation of something you deal with every single day, or traffic, or lines, or all these things that, yeah, okay, like your plane's late, there's bad weather and the plane's not taking off 4 hours. What am I going to do? Well, when you first hear about it, oh God, and you just go back, you sit your ass down, you do something, and you just try not to. And happens in our lives all the time, so just get used to it. Did I ever want to change me? Yeah, I've thought about, especially as I've gotten older and things get a little bit more smoothed out, and the vascular neurosurgical world changed, and I wasn't doing as many of the cases that I really like to do and I was trained to do. I thought of going into IT or doing a startup and leaving medicine and running a startup full time. I have a company that I helped to found called Playback Health, and at one point I was sort of running it before it became a fully funded company. But then when that happened, then my best friend took over. I'm now like the CMO, the chief medical officer. And could I do that job? Like, could I be like Elon Musk and run the company? And I just wouldn't want to do that. It's not my skill set. I'm not a financial whiz. I don't like raising money and asking people for money, which is what CEOs do. And I can keep my day job. So, but I have found other things to balance out, whether it's being an advisor or being a consultant or getting involved in IT to, find other outlets for my creativity, which I think is important. I mentioned that last week. Medicine is very gratifying and incredibly fulfilling, but over time, it's not that it's easier or boring. It's just that you start to be more efficient, and you feel your brain still has an opportunity to impact something else. And you need those. I personally need those challenges. And it's not that neurosurgery is easy, but some of the challenges I face aren't as difficult to manage as they used to be because of your experience. And so you can use your wisdom and your experience to impact something else. And that's fun. And but like sometimes the people who do that often aren't just purely money driven. Like if you're all about money and every operation you do makes you money, then you're just going to keep doing more surgery. And you may not have an open mind to do things because it's just all about making money. That's why if your focus is making money and that's your motivation, it just really limits your ability to do some of these secondary or tertiary things that can really be fulfilling. So that's not a knock against making money. It just understand where that fits into the importance of your life. Are there specific, how would you suggest getting shadowing hours in clinicals in undergrad? It's pretty easy. Most undergraduate campuses, at least in cities, have hospitals associated with them. If you're in a smaller college or in a place where there isn't a hospital, that's a little bit more difficult. But in general, there are medical schools or science programs that are associated with most universities or even small colleges. You just have to ask. And some of this is go blindly. Just when you go home or on a vacation, just walk up to a neurosurgical department, like just walk in and ask the secretary, you're so and so, and you're interested in spending a summer or a month or a week shadowing someone. Is there anybody you could talk to? And eventually you'll find somebody. I mean, most neurosurgeons are interested in having students, and we're all very proud of what we do, and we don't mind showing it off. So if you do that, you'll find a way. It's all up to you. It's not going to just hit you in the face and drop in your lap. You have to actually work for it. And that's a big difference than what you're used to. And experiential learning is different. You're so used to being hand fed your tests and your lectures, and this is what you're supposed to do. And here's here's, you fill this out, this is your outcome. You know, as you get older, your education is experiential. And sometimes that means that you have to go find it. It's not going to just be like, oh, here's how you do this. You have to be creative, and you have to get away from expecting other people to solve your problems for you or to tell you what to do. And that's maturity, if that comes with maturity. So this is one of those steps. Like if you really want to go shadow somebody, find somebody and go do it. There's not somebody who's going to call you up and say, hey, do you want to shadow me? It's not going to happen. And that's the difference. Is it hard to manage a family? Yes. Is it hard to manage a family while doing a residency? Yes. You know, you need to have a really supportive partner who doesn't see you a lot. If you have kids as a resident, you're not going to see them very much. It's challenging. Doesn't mean doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And you get through it, and everybody's fine as long as you're, you know, pure of heart and are doing it for the right reasons. It shouldn't bother. It can't bother you. You know, I was born my dad's second year of medical school. And he was a resident all through when I was up till, you know, I was 5 or 6 years old. I don't really remember him that much when I was a little kid. I don't think he was ever home. Is that a good thing? Not really, but I still love my dad, you know, so it's, you just have to, it takes hard work to do this stuff, and it's not going to just come easily without some sacrifice. How do you view the efficiency of the American medical system, the 4-year bachelor's required for other? It's the system, you know, we're going to probably see 3-year medical schools coming. NYU has one now. Some of the newer medicals are 3 years. I think it probably can be done in 3. I think the trouble with the European system is that you miss out on college. You know, college is a very American thing. You know, the sports and the fraternities and the sororities and the social life and the getting drunk to your dead and all this stuff. You know, there's an element of growth, and the American culture is built on the college experience. And I think that Europe isn't like that. You know, there's no fraternities. Sports is totally different. It's a club system. They don't have these big, you know, rah-rah, you know, pom-poms and March Madness and all the stuff is part of American culture. And, you know, that's what college is here. And if you try to combine them, you know, into one thing, it's harder to have that typical college experience if you're dialed in to be in doctor right away, I think. That doesn't mean it's a worse system. It just means that's the system we live in. And I like the American system. I think that I've been to Europe. You know, to decide you want to be a doctor when you're 18, that's a big deal. You know, I think the college gives you some time to test it, you know, maybe in the summers and, you know, shadow people, do a rotation and make sure it's really what you want. There's a big difference in your brain between 18 and 22. And to decide you want to be a doctor when you're 18 it's probably coming from, not always from the right place. I think their parents can have more impact and things like that. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there are many 18-year-olds that know they want to be a doctor or a nurse for that matter, and then go to college knowing that. But there's still that transitional time where you can, both my brothers thought they were pre-med, and they stopped during college. So, you know, had they been in Europe, they would have been 18, they would have gone to a pre-med curriculum, and they may never have found what they want to do. So I think those are the advantages to the American system. I think it probably isn't as efficient. It probably is not as, you know, it's more costly. It's more, you know, it's a little bit less focused on the long-term goal, but I do think you probably have more fun. And it also allows you to have an exit. Like if you think you want to be pre-med and then decide later on, you don't have to finish it out. And I don't know what happens in Europe if you go in as a medical student at 18 and then you decide 3 years in you don't want to do it. I don't even know what happens. But I like our system. I'm biased, but I like our system. My most memorable surgical procedure, had a few. I mean, I think more or less it's the person and the patient and the outcome. You know, there are some crazy operations that you get a lot of feedback from, but then that's really the feedback from the patients and making people healthy and well. I mean, probably maybe one of the most memorable is the woman who was in our second Netflix show, who was blind before we operated on her, and then she woke up, she couldn't see, and then literally 3 days post-op, she got her vision back. That was a remarkable, and it was very difficult surgery. It's a remarkable operation and a remarkable outcome. I could think of that would be pretty high up there. But I must say that I would say all the good outcomes I'm grateful for. You know, I get a lot of great feedback from making people better, even the most simple operations. sometimes the most complex ones, even though they're fun to do, when the outcomes aren't as good or people are suffer, it's not, the feedback's different. But what I can say, for every good operation, it pales in comparison to the impact a negative outcome has on you. Like, it's much easier for me to remember the people I've hurt and the disasters and the death and destruction from obviously no fault of my own, but bad things happen. And I remember every single one. And as you get older, they build up and it makes you more fearful because the feeling you feel of hurting people, it's terrible. And you have to get used to that. And I don't mind not doing really difficult things anymore. In the old days, when I was younger, I enjoyed it because I was pushing myself and trying to make myself better. I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to do the hardest things well and prove that I could do it. And now I don't have anything to prove anymore, and I don't really know if I really want to do that stuff as much. I don't have that same ambition because that you can hurt people, and there's nothing worse than a person who's totally intact one minute who has a stroke or has a really bad outcome or dies. It just kills you. And if it doesn't, then you're not human. And so I find it's really the ones that the people I've hurt that are far more impactful than the good outcomes. And as far as the favorite part about filming the shows, hard to know. I mean, it was a little bit cumbersome to have the camera always around. I can't say I think my favorite parts are probably the stuff that were in the show, or afterwards I'd be with Audie, who is the cameraman, and can you believe what just happened? Like, we'd be like laughing about it. Like, I can't believe that just happened. Or, he'd see me in either an emotional situation, a family, and we were just like, it was just like exhausting, like, because the emotion was coming out. And I think, also experiencing with John was great. And John and I love each other. We're like best friends. And, seeing John enjoy it and seeing his personality and his kind of character come out was really, I think, my favorite part of the show. Just watching John. One time there's a scene in the first show where we ran into each other in the elevator. The cameraman was just me, and I get in the elevator and John's standing there like accidentally. And I think we were kind of looking at each other, and it was, I think, my favorite scene in all the shows. We just have a tremendous respect for each other, and it got even more so after being through this experience of the new 2 Netflix shows, which doesn't always happen when you get a lot of attention. Sometimes attention can drive people apart. But I love him like a brother, and that, I think, was my favorite part of having that experience with him. Specific organization networks recommended first. Well, you can join the CNS. There's a student version. I was just talking about the AANS, which is our other national organization, creating a subgroups of you. So you want to be a neurosurgeon, so you're going to be a neurosurgeon, so you are a neurosurgeon, and then what you're retiring. So you want to be is when you're like a medical student or college student. Now you're a nurse, or want to be, going to be is when you're a resident. Now you are when you're an attending, and then some program about downside. So I think the national organization is very aware of young medical students and college students that want to be neurosurgeons. And if you go on their websites, there are a lot of resources available, whether it's the CNS, which is the Congress of Neurological Surgeons, or the AANS, which is the American Academy of Neurological Surgeons. Go on those websites. There are resources for young students and for people who are interested. Still, I think the shadowing experience and tracking a real live neurosurgeon down and talking to him or her can be really an effective way of engaging with the field and getting directionality that way. You're welcome. Nuria, thank you. Have deaths occurred while residents are on duty? How do such experiences affect the residents? Yeah, I mean, I haven't, experienced a suicide. It's happened. I don't know about neurosurgeons. Neurosurgery residents tend to be pretty resilient. It's odd that I think it's self-selected. The people going to neurosurgery residency are kind of a little more hardcore and are willing to just destroy themselves. Whereas, a lot of times these what I've seen is that anesthesia has a high rate of suicide because they have access to the medications that can do it. And so this is a real problem. Mental health and overcoming depression, anxiety, stress, burnout is something that the national medical organizations are all trying to address, whether at the residency level or at the attending level. I think it also, to keep in mind, it's why it's so important to choose something you really want to do and do it for the right reasons. That if this only is worse if you choose something for the wrong reasons, that you feel locked in. Sometimes it's like a marriage. Sometimes it's hard to get out when it's bad. You start to feel like, if I quit, what are people going to think of me? And then you just, run the course. That's why you got to choose wisely. Choose your subspecialty. Just going to medical school is easy compared to the subspecialty decision, because you go to medical school, go work. Like I said, you can go work on Wall Street if you want. But I think that the beauty of neurosurgery and the people who do it, I think our group's amazing. Every single person in our department, I think, is motivated for the right reasons, or they wouldn't be in our department. And they've all chosen this because they really love what they do. In fact, and I do too, I get anxious when I'm not operating, or if I lose a case, or because we love to operate. It's not making money. It's just, we'd operate for free if we could. And that's why this field is so fantastic if you're cut out for it. But as long as you feel that way about whatever you do, I think you're going to be okay. And the burnout doesn't tend to happen. You get burned out when you're doing crap you hate, or you wished you weren't doing, or wished you were doing something else. That's when burnout kicks in. So I think that's the advice: is choose wisely. It's like choosing your spouse. Probably the two most important things are who you choose to be your spouse and what you choose to do with your life. So I'll hand it over to you, Randy.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm out in Long Island at a CME event about practice building. And just heard from Rick Komentar from University of Miami, who talked a lot about kind of similar stuff, in addition to, just how to be a great doctor. And the kind of point is, he just loves it. He's obsessed. And so there's no burnout when you're obsessed. And in fact, I think the majority of us are as well. Dave, this is my goodbye to BrainTerns. This is the last session of BrainTerns. You were the closing remarks. I wanted to thank everyone for being a part of it. This will be quick. It's more or less an opportunity to tell us what you liked or didn't like. You're going to get surveys from everyone. And then, Hannah, are we announcing our t-shirt winner?
Yes. So we do have a winner. I'll pull up.
Randy, I got to jump to the meeting. Thank you. Thank Kristi. Thank you and Samantha for handling this. And feel free to reach out anytime for anything as you move along. And
Thank
Randy,
you.
I can't, your leadership here is critical. And, I think that this remains a real value to our department. And so I think to neurosurgery, and thanks to Hannah for all the administrative tasking and supporting this. I think it's something our department feels really strongly about, and appreciate all your guys' hard work. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Couldn't agree more.
Much.
All right, Hannah,
Right.
Kristi, let's pull up these t-shirts and show everyone what they're going to be wearing. What's so hot for the fall?
So
The summer fall 2024.
I went through and tallied the votes, and our winner for our t-shirt design contest is the design number 4. So this was submitted by Phoebe Tolentino. Congratulations, Phoebe.
Amazing.
Your prize is we're going to get you a free t-shirt. I also will be in touch with you so that we can get the files so that we can add this to our bonfire store. We're super excited to add this to our merchandise shop and have it as our 2024 BrainTurn swag. I'm going to be announcing this on Instagram and our social media channels today as well. Our goal is to have this available to you to purchase by next Friday. So it might be available sooner than that, but no later than Friday the 26th, you'll be able to purchase this shirt.
Amazing. Yeah, stay tuned to the social media then to hear about that. Remember, the funding for this goes really to keep the program running. We're like public radio in that sense. This doesn't happen for free. It costs money to produce all these things. And I have to extend a huge thank you to everyone who has participated from a student level to an attending level. People take out time out of their schedules, they put together talks. And they're motivated by the engagement from the students, the questions that you get. This is a really unique program in that you can engage with us, and we get to meet you and engage with you. And I would be lying if I didn't say that I get more out of this probably than you guys may get out of me. So I love hearing what people are interested about. I love seeing what the next generation is. I typically get a lot of communication afterwards from people who are willing to go that extra mile to want to be successful in this field or just learn more. And it's a really win-win situation for me. And so it's been a great 2 weeks. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer. And I want to thank our moderators again for being committed to this every single day and doing a phenomenal job. And so thank them. And what else, Hannah? What else do we have to say? We'll see you next summer, probably.
Yes.
And-
So I'm gonna be sending out, I'm trying to figure out how many emails I can send at once, but I have like my emails ready to go. So within the next like 20-30 minutes, you'll be receiving an email from me with the templates for these certificates. I'm going to post them in the chat as well. And then you will also receive a post-webinar survey. So if you could just take 3 to 5 minutes to fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. That survey will allow you to share your feedback, as well as for us to gather some demographic information from you, just so we can get a better chance of who is tuning in. And then there's also an opportunity for you to share any suggestions for our future programming. So if you could just take, again, 3 to 5 minutes to do that survey, we would be greatly appreciative of that.
Amazing. All right, everyone, enjoy your Friday, enjoy your summer, and we'll reach out to us, find us on social, touch base, share, your experience with this and tell everyone you loved it. All right. Have a great summer. Bye.
Bye, Dr. D'Amico.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Kristi. Bye, Samantha.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much.
Of course, you guys are queens. Thank you.
You're a queen,
Need a
Hannah.
recommendation letter, let me know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.